Namah Shivaya. Om 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 Namah
Everyone together. व्याप्तं येन चराचरं तत्पदं दर्शितं येन तस्मै श्री गुरुवे together. Tasmai Shri Guruve Namaha. Tasmai Shri Guruve Namaha.
Welcome to Satsang. Let's keep our eyes closed together. Just allow yourself to find an ease in the body and the breath. Nothing to strain, nothing to push, nothing to do. Just allow an ease to come in the body, a spaciousness to come in the breath. As the awareness merges gently and easily into the breath. And if it wanders, don't worry, just bring it back. Bring it back to the breath. You'll notice sensations will arise. Thoughts will arise. Distractions will arise. Don't worry. Just realize they are not you as you watch them blow across your consciousness. Like wispy clouds moving on a windy day. Or like cars moving along the freeway. But just notice them and watch them. But don't identify as them. Allow the awareness to rest in the breath. Stay focused on the place between the thoughts. The blue sky between the clouds. The space between the cars rushing by. Just keep drawing the awareness back to that. And if you find the mind still wanders, you can give it a gentle mantra. of so hum. You can chant gently to yourself, so on the inhalation, and hum on the exhalation. It means I am that. So hum. I am that. I am one with existence. I am one with the Creator and the creation. There is no separation. I am that. So hum. Keep drawing the awareness back to the breath. Back to that space between the distractions. Back to the ever-expanding space of awareness. Gently bring the palms of the hands together at chest level and rub the palms of the hands against each other. Press your palms into your closed eyes. And whenever you're ready, lower your hands and open your eyes. Welcome. It's such a joy to be back on the banks of Mother Ganga. We'll start as always. Satsang is a time of, well, the word literally means in association of truth, being together in the truth. But it's not a time of a lecture, a discourse. It's a time in which that which is keeping you from living in the truth, from living as the truth. I mean, we know it. Chances are, if you're sitting here, if you've come to Rishikesh, if you've come to the ashram, if you've come to satsang, chances are you've read, you've heard something that has told you, who you are is divine, who you are is soul, who you are is spirit, chances are, what's so beautiful about an environment like this compared to a corporate environment, for example, is you're dealing with people who have already chosen a spiritual path. You're a self-selected group. And so chances are you've heard, you've read, you've intuited, you've learned in some way, I'm not the body, I'm soul, I'm spirit, divinity. So we know that's true, and yet, anybody find it easy to live like that? Anybody find it challenge-free to move through the world as soul? Anybody find you can remember that 24 hours a day? In all your interactions in the office, in the family, with the neighbors. So we forget. And we slip into false association, false identification. And when that happens, it brings up suffering. Either immediately, because in that ignorance I suffer, I experience suffering due to my ignorance, due to the false identification, due to the anger that arises, or the ego that arises, or the separation that arises, or the competition or jealousies that arise, or the grudges that arise. I experience suffering from that. Or sometimes we're not yet quite so finely attuned, and so we don't yet experience suffering directly from that. But based on the anger, or based on the greed, or based on the lust, or based on the ignorance, I act. And I then get what we call colloquially bad karma. Because when you act out of anger, or out of greed, or out of lust, inevitably we do things that are not very skillful, that are not seeds of peace and oneness and joy. They end up being seeds of suffering. And so then when we get this bad karma, then we suffer. So that ignorance causes suffering, either immediately when we're finally attuned, or a little bit later when the repercussions hit us, if we're not so finely attuned to experience it right away. But inevitably, that ignorance leads to suffering. And so satsang is that time of coming back together in truth. But as I began with, it's not a time where I choose a topic and I come in with a lecture. Sometimes there's holidays, there's a special occasion that inevitably will lend itself to a particular topic. But really, this is a time for you to look within and ask yourself, what is it that's keeping me from living in that light? I've heard it, I've read it, I've learned it, I know it. I know I'm not the body. I know I'm not the history. I know I'm not the roles. I know I'm not the mind stuff. I know I'm not the thoughts. Why am I so troubled then? Why am I so troubled by my thoughts? Or why am I so troubled by my neighbor or by my family member? Why am I so troubled by my history? If I know it, why can't I live it? And so this is really the place for us to come into all of the beautiful variety of ways that ignorance manifests itself. As many people as there are sitting here, as many days of our lives that we have, is yet another variety of ways that ignorance surfaces. If you're attuned to the self, you'll notice hour by hour. It's not even just day by day, but if we're subtly aware, hour by hour, that ignorance appears in so many different ways. And this is the place where we come together through your questions. It's not you ask, I answer. It's you ask, and then that question creates a space into which all of us together dive deeply into truth. So that's what satsang is, and we typically begin with a question that comes in advance. People send them in by email in advance. People send them in on social media. People who couldn't stay, give them to our Seva team. And then we open it up for any questions that anyone here has. So, keeping with our tradition, I will begin with one that's come in advance, and then we'll open it up to whatever's here. I have heard Pujya Swamiji say that we should do meditation in the morning, no reaction in the day, and self-reflection or introspection in the evening. But when I meditate in the mornings, I feel so sleepy afterwards that I just want to go back to bed. What should I do? So there's a lot of factors at play here. Even though we are not a body, we have a body. And that's important to realize. It sounds very obvious. Naturally, we have a body. But as we embark on a spiritual path, what ends up happening a lot of times is as our awareness and our focus shifts from I'm not my body, it very quickly shifts into this subjugation of the body, this ignoring of the body. And there's a lot of spiritual practice that we do to remind us we're not the body. So for example, Pujya Swamiji had to stand on one leg 11 hours a day doing meditation. Now obviously there was a depth to it beyond just I'm not the body. But as the body aches, as it hurts, as you get tired, it teaches you, fatigue in the legs, but I'm still here. We have practices of fasting. We have practices of staying awake all night. Even married couples have practices of abstinence from sexual relationships. Why? Well, clearly at some point we're going to eat again. Clearly we're going to sleep again. Married couples, chances are going to have their sensual relationships again. Why abstain? We do that to teach us. My body is hungry, it wants food, but I'm fasting. My body is tired, it wants sleep, but I'm staying awake. And it teaches us not to give in to every call of the body, but it's very easy to quickly swing to the other end of the pendulum, to ignore illnesses of the body, pains of the body, physical hungers of the body, needs of the body, and sleep is one of them. So if you find that every morning when you wake up, it's very difficult to get up, no matter how many days in a row you do it. It's difficult for everybody in the beginning. But if you find that it's always difficult and it doesn't get better, that may be a signal that you're staying awake too late at night. It's very simple. Your body may need more sleep. See what happens if you go to sleep an hour earlier. Or push through the morning and sleep for an hour in the afternoon. But don't ignore it as though the body were just a massive inanimate object that you have to subjugate and become in control over. If it's telling you, hey, wait, I'm exhausted here, listen to it. Because when you don't listen to the body when it whispers, it doesn't go away. It just starts to shout. And it'll shout in different ways. It'll shout in different illnesses. So be aware of the body, and be aware, though, on a more subtle level, that sometimes if you find that you are getting enough sleep, if you find that if you get up to do something other than meditate, like when you get up in the morning, instead of meditating, you go straight on Facebook, then you're not tired, that's a signal to look at what's coming up for you in meditation. That's a signal that chances are it's not the body that's needing more sleep, but it's the ego, it's the mind that's really not wanting to meditate. And that's where you have to just create a discipline and sit. A lot of times when we sit to meditate, things come up. It's very easy during the day to be too busy. But when we sit quietly, we close our eyes, no distractions, that's when the mirror of our life comes right up in front of our face. Now, we're not supposed to analyze it at that time. We're not supposed to judge it or go into the drama. It's not what meditation is. But nonetheless, simply coming face to face with that, for a lot of us, is very uncomfortable. And so it's very easy for the body to just decide, oh, I'm too tired, forget this meditation thing, I've got to go to sleep. It's just so much easier to slip into dream-like, kind of sort of awake, sort of asleep, hallucination, dreamy consciousness than to stay with the meditation. This is where discipline is really required. Sincerely required. Just stay with it. And tell yourself sincerely, not going back to sleep. If you can be wide awake from looking at Facebook, if you can be wide awake reading sports scores, if you can be wide awake on your email in the morning, not an issue with the body. We're going to meditate. You know, a lot of times we act without thinking, what we call thoughtless action. And we know the severe repercussions of that. Acting without thinking. We say things we shouldn't say. We do things we shouldn't do. But on the flip side of that, we also have what we call actionless thought. And that's actually just as dangerous. Meaning, I have a thought that says I really should get up and meditate every day. I have a thought that says I'm going to get up early in the morning and I'm going to have a spiritual practice. I'm going to set my alarm and I'm going to get up. And just as dangerous as thoughtless action is, so is actionless thought. And so if you make a commitment to yourself, I'm going to get up and meditate, make sure you do. Or tell yourself, forget it, I'm not going to do it. That's also your prerogative. We all have free will. If you don't want to do it, don't do it. Don't do it because someone here says to you, you should do it. Do it because inside you know that's something you want. And if it's not something you want, then wait till it is something you want. But don't create a pattern of identification that says, yeah, I make all these commitments and I don't fulfill them. Because that's very dangerous for your life. That's a very dangerous way of understanding the self, is yeah, I commit to things and I don't do them. It's better don't commit. It's better just say, I'm not interested in meditation. Or I'm not interested in getting up, I'll meditate in the night. That's also your prerogative. You've got thousands and thousands of years of spiritual teaching saying the morning hour is very divine. But if you know better, no problem. We have free will. And so if you make a commitment to do something, do it. Because if you don't, it sets up a very damaging way of thinking about yourself. And it sets you up for your whole life, whatever it is that you want. Of saying, well, I'm just kind of that sort of person who makes a commitment and I don't follow through. I'm the type of person who makes a commitment and then makes excuses. You don't want to have that way of understanding yourself. It's better just to say, I'm the person for whom morning meditation does not work. Evening works. Okay. Really, no problem. There absolutely are people for whom their circadian rhythm, their body clocks, are much better in the evening, no problem. It's actually better for you in the long run to sleep late every morning, commit to meditate in the evening and do it, than to commit to meditate in the morning and not do it. If after you meditate, you feel sleepy, take another cold shower. Take one first before you meditate. And if you're sleepy after you meditate, take another one. But don't allow yourself to get into this habit of getting back into bed unless you find that you're meditating in the middle of the night. Some people wake up in the middle of the night. It happens to me with jet lag. Find myself with jet lag, wide awake, 2 o'clock in the morning. Have a nice meditation, go back to sleep. But in general, after your meditation, don't go back into that state of dullness of the mind. Just take a cold shower, get up, have a cup of tea, take a walk, drink some water, whatever you need. And if you need to sleep a little bit in the afternoon, sleep a little bit in the afternoon. But allow that discipline to happen. It may take a little while, but stick with it. It's going to create what we call sanskaras, which are impressions in you. In the world of science, we call them neural networks, neural patterns that actually dictate the habits and the way that I live. So create them and live them. And before I take another of the questions that have come in advance, I'm happy to take any questions that are here. Yes?
So, not here, wherever we go, whatever people on the other side always wants to accept. I mean, we say something, they understand something else. So, at times it gets so very difficult. I mean, it could be because of expectations. You're right. I mean, that could be right. But how to go ahead with such, how to...
So communications.
Yes.
He said, it's very difficult in the world. We say something. We say one thing. People hear and understand something else. And how to deal with this. So a couple of points. First of all, as with any of those sorts of things, misunderstandings, miscommunications, personality problems, conflicts with people, a good general rule of thumb is, if it's only one person in my community who has that problem, chances are the problem is with that person or in our interaction. But if the problem is with lots of people, chances are the problem's in me. So if I say, God, there's this person in my office or this neighbor that I have or this person in the community, and whatever I say, they misunderstand, they take it the wrong way. And that's the only person in my life that I have that problem with. Okay, chances are it's an issue with that person. Or an issue in our energetic or linguistic communication. But if I find that pretty much wherever I go, I have communication problems with people, that's when it's really important to look within and say, what is it about my style of communicating that makes people not understand? And there's a lot of different aspects here. Number one, communication is not only verbal. Communication is also in our body language. And so we know, for example, even with animals, with dogs, people who have dogs as a pet, if you say to the dog, "You beautiful, wonderful, amazing animal," that dog's going to go, right? I mean, the dog thinks it's just been blasted and scolded and you're going to kick it and And if you say to it, "You horrible, worthless, stupid animal," the dog is going to go, and it's going to come and like want to get petted because it understands I'm about to get some loving. Now, you could say, well, clearly the dog doesn't understand anything because I've just told it it's stupid and worthless. Why does it think it's going to get some love in here? Because my tone is the tone of love. And in the first case, even though my words were very nice, my tone was such that it conveys anger and fury and maybe even violence if I'm a violent person or my dog is used to violence. Now that's a very drastic example, but the same thing happens in our communications. Raise your hand if you're married or you've ever been married. Here, raise your hand. Okay, great, so most of you. So if your husband or wife seems a little bit off, and you say to them, "Honey, what's wrong?" And they say, "Oh, nothing." And they walk out and slam the door. Okay? How many of you are going to believe that nothing's wrong? Anybody? We know, obviously, something is wrong. Now, they've told us nothing. They've said nothing. But their demeanor, their actions have said something completely different. So we know, okay, there is a problem here. So a lot of times with communication, the reason that we may find that we have miscommunications with people is our words say one thing, but our demeanor, our body language, our actions, our tone of voice, whatever it may be, says something completely different. So that's where it's really important to be honest with ourselves. Is what I'm saying really honest? So if I'm the one who says nothing is wrong, I know that wasn't honest. I know something's wrong. If something's not wrong, I'm not going to walk out and slam the door. Clearly something is wrong. But I'm playing a little game here. Maybe the game is I want them to keep coming. "Oh, tell me, honey. Oh, what is it, honey? Oh, what did I do wrong, honey?" Maybe I want them to follow me. Maybe I'm angry at them. Whatever it may be, I know that I'm not being honest. And the way that you know that is if I say nothing and the other person says, "Well, okay, then what's for dinner?" How am I going to respond? "What the hell? Can't you see? Don't you know I'm upset? But you just said nothing's wrong. But you know something's wrong." And then we get into these spats. I've said nothing is wrong. The person took it at face value, started now asking me what's for dinner. Now I'm doubly angry because not only was I upset in the first place, but now I feel ignored. I feel like nobody cares about me. Clearly I'm upset. Yeah, I lied about it, but clearly I'm upset. Can't you tell? And so if we're having communication problems, we have to first ask ourselves, is what I said really honest? And if not, then let me make sure that I'm actually speaking the truth. Because if it's really the truth, it's going to be in sync. My tone of voice, my words, my body language, my actions, everything is in sync. But if what I'm speaking is not true, that's when things get out of sync. The last important piece here, though, because this happens a lot of times when we embark on a spiritual path, and we're trying to explain it to our family members, let's say, or our old friends, people who don't understand spirituality on that level. And that becomes a slightly different problem, but I'm going to go there for a minute because we're speaking what to us is truth, and they cannot hear it. Why? Because it sounds crazy to them. I know when I first came here, and my parents did not understand what was going on, and they kept saying, why? What is it that you see there? What is it that you do there? What is it that makes you want to live there? Well, for me, the highest truth was God. The highest truth was I was experiencing God. The highest truth was Ganga, this sacred river. The highest truth was Pujya Swamiji, my guru, in whom I was experiencing the divine. And I would talk to my parents and I would say, I see God. Now, when I said that, what they heard was, she's been brainwashed. She's gone crazy. She's joined a cult. Okay? Now, it didn't matter how many times I said, I see God. Every single time what they heard was, she's been brainwashed. Why? Because that's just not part of their world. And in most of the particularly Western world, people join religious organizations. They start talking about seeing God. They leave their life behind. What does it mean? It means they've been brainwashed and joined a cult. And so that's what they heard. And what I learned very early on was a wonderful, wonderful truth, which was I kept speaking my highest truth because to me, that was what I was called upon to do. So every time they talked to me about India and why I wanted to be here, I would talk about seeing God. And every time I said that, I could see their faces get all red and worried. And I knew what they were hearing was gone crazy, joined cult, daughter's gone, lost her, like that. And what I finally realized was, if I knew they couldn't hear it, it wasn't truth for me to keep speaking it. If my highest truth, let's call it the letter A, let's just take the alphabet for a moment. Let's say highest truth is A. But every single time I say A, you hear C. And I know that. I know that if I say A, you hear C. Well, then speaking A is no longer speaking truth because I know that what's going in your ears is C. But then, if I speak B, now B is closer to truth than C is, right? B is closer to A than C is. And if I speak B, maybe you can hear B. And for me, B was the seva. B was the children. B was the schools. B was the medical care programs. B was all of the humanitarian programs that were running here. So I could talk to them about the children and the schools and the women and the healthcare, and they could hear that. And what I realized was that even though it wasn't my highest truth, because A was my highest truth, speaking B was actually more true than speaking A. Because when I spoke A, they heard C. And if I spoke B, they could hear B. And so it became necessary for me, instead of trying to speak A and to ram it into them, knowing it's not going to work, for me to speak something that they could actually hear and understand, which also is true. It just wasn't my highest truth. But it was a truth they were able to hear. And I mention that point as well because a lot of us, as we're on this path, will find people don't understand. Well, is there a way you can explain it to them that they can understand? And it may not necessarily be the fullness and the most complete highestness of your ecstatic experiences. But is there a piece of it you can speak that they hear, that they understand? If so, speak that. Because slowly, slowly, slowly through that, you can bring them to A. But A is not something that you can convince someone of. It's something they have to feel. And as long as what they're hearing is cult and brainwashing, nobody's in the mood to feel anything. But if they can hear children and schools and women and healthcare and trees, well, they relax. They open up. And then slowly, slowly, they start to be able to feel A. Okay? Good.
Well, B is A anyway.
I'm sorry?
B is A anyway.
Yes. Yeah, B is there anyway.
Aham Brahmasmi. You are the totality.
Yes.
So actually, it wasn't their misunderstanding, and it wasn't your misunderstanding. It was just you didn't have a language where you could meet.
Exactly. And that's what we're talking about. It's just the language, exactly. It's the semantic way of communicating. And so if through speaking B, it brings them into a state in which we can connect, that's what's important. Communication is a way of connection. It is a way of entering together into that totality. It's a way of just using language. If nothing needs to be done, food doesn't have to be put on the table, the car doesn't have to be filled with gas, children don't have to be bathed and sent off to school, then there's no need for communication. We can literally just live in a divine and blissful and even wordless state of that awareness of Aham Brahmasmi. We are the totality, we are the divine, nothing but that. The dilemma comes when we have to start using language. Because of course, it's shallow, especially the English language. Sanskrit language tends to have greater depth, but English language I find much more difficult in many ways. But that becomes a beautiful challenge of how can I use that language to connect. And that becomes also part of the sadhana. Silence is a part of the sadhana, and language is a part of the sadhana. Yeah. Wonderful. Have a beautiful, beautiful rest of your evening tonight. And we will gather again tomorrow. And if you have a question that you feel shy to ask in public, or you're not going to be here tomorrow, you can feel free to get it to our beautiful Seva team, and they will get it to me in advance. And if you will be here tomorrow, feel free to just bring it in and raise your hand, and we'll take it tomorrow.